They say when America sneezes, we catch the flu. What do you think's going on with housing is like mismanagement? Think again.
Things are so bad at Donald Trump's Department of Housing and Urban Development that whistleblowers are putting their careers on the line to tell you what is happening behind the scenes. My name is Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective. And these two whistleblowers, Paul Asadebe and Palmer Heenan, have been retaliated against. Palmer Heenan was fired after raising concerns, and Paul Asadebe is on administrative leave. That is how much the Trump administration doesn't want you to hear from them, to know what is actually happening with Trump's housing policy for Americans. Both are former, and in Paul's case, almost former, HUD civil rights attorneys. And I was invited by Senator Elizabeth Warren to attend a spotlight forum where these two brave men shared their testimony about the ways that the Trump administration is betraying Americans who rely on the services legally obligated to be provided by HUD. I had the opportunity to interview these two whistleblowers, and you'll be hearing from them directly in just a moment. But for some context, we spend a lot of time talking about the terrible Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner, on this channel. Most recently, he moved to gut funding for evidence-based programs that would push at least 170,000 Americans to homelessness. This was only stopped after nonprofits intervened. And a judge intervened. I recently also talked about reporting that the Trump administration is refusing to act on cases of discrimination, refusing to enforce the Fair Housing Act, a law that was enacted in 1968 that prohibits discrimination in housing on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, and disability. These two whistleblowers were direct in their testimony about that exact point. They said unequivocally that the Trump administration's failure to enforce the civil rights laws in this country will make people homeless. That by leaving Americans who are facing housing discrimination without any of the support that they are legally required to receive, they will be pushed to the streets.
If you've been injured at work, making a workers' comp claim can be a tough thing to do. Bloomers Lawyers can help you. Visit our website to book a free appointment with no upfront fees. Call Bloomers.
What's this rubbish?
The testimony I heard yesterday described an agency that is hostile to claims of discrimination, that HUD is simply no longer interested in taking on civil rights violations in housing, leaving those people who are facing housing discrimination without any pathways to justice. And one thing that really sticks with me from this hearing is one whistleblower describing how those who attempt to enforce the law are not just being systematically prevented from doing so and punished when they try, but that all of us are paying taxes that are going toward this effort to not enforce a law that is in place to protect us. So let's hear from these brave whistleblowers who have put their careers on the line to come forward and reveal to us this injustice and this harm. We are joined by Palmer Heenan. We just heard powerful testimony, one of the HUD whistleblowers who came forward. Let's just talk about, why did you come forward today?
I felt like I had to. I've spent my career helping people as a civil rights attorney obtain access to housing. It's what I really always wanted to do as a lawyer, and it's what I've done for a decade now. And so from my perspective, when I saw that even the most basic cases were under threat, were under attack, that people who had experienced horrific racial discrimination or discrimination because of their disability were not being given access to the justice that Congress put into the Fair Housing Act and said, HUD, you of all the agencies, housing is too important. We are requiring you to take cases from the public, investigate those cases, and if you find that discrimination has occurred, you must prosecute that discrimination. It's too important. We're not leaving this to chance. We're not going to make this a political priority or not. This is something that we as the government and we as the people of the United States of America are choosing to do. And I saw that that was under threat, and so I felt like I had no choice but to come forward and say what I was seeing.
And you were fired because of that, and it's unfortunate because people who are passionate, people who care, people who are wanting to help other people are being pushed out of those roles. But in your testimony, you also talked about the barriers that people in power at HUD are putting in place, that the Trump administration is putting in place from allowing people like you to do your job. Can you talk about some of those barriers? What are the actions that the Trump administration has been taking that interfere with attorneys' ability to do their job to protect people?
There are two parts to this, right? There are the barriers that were put in place that prevented us as the attorneys who actually prosecute cases of fair housing discrimination, barriers like a gag order. So from almost the first day of this administration, I was told you're not allowed to speak to anyone outside of HUD. Even to other federal agencies, even on routine business, you're not allowed to speak to anyone outside of HUD. Now, who would hire an attorney who literally can't speak to them, since our complainants are outside of HUD, but also to the witnesses in their case, or even to the defendants, the people who are being accused of discrimination? It made it absolutely impossible for us to proceed on virtually any case across the board. But more than that, I want to talk about the barriers that were put in place that hurt the people that I've dedicated my legal career to protecting. Because to me, that's the worst part of this. And it's the little injustices to me that matter. Like the fact that it's now HUD policy that you have to justify every cent that you're asking for, even when your landlord agrees, yes, I owe you X amount of money. HUD is still going to require you to justify every penny that you and the landlord have agreed the landlord owes you. They're not just going to ask you to justify it, they're asking for paperwork. And imagine you're a person who's just experienced racial discrimination. You've been told you're not allowed to live here because you're black. And I guess the idea is that the very first thought that you're going to have is, well, let me get my receipt for discrimination. Like it just doesn't make sense. It's not the way that these cases have ever been litigated. And I don't just mean that under Democratic administrations, because our office and the enforcement power that we were given was put into place by Ronald Reagan. This is not a liberal or conservative issue, it's an American issue. And it is so sad that this is where we're at.
And housing is so fundamental to everything. So it's why it's so important that you came forward. I really appreciate it. Everyone really appreciates it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you helping us get this message out.
I'm here with Paul Asadebe, one of the HUD whistleblowers who came forward. Something I talk a lot about on my channel is how poverty is a policy choice. And when I listened to your very powerful testimony, I heard you say that people will be made homeless because of the choices that the Trump administration is making, their failure to enforce the civil rights protections, the Fair Housing Act. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for people who are being discriminated against right now in housing when they try to get help? What happens when they try to get help right now?
Yeah, just noting I'm speaking in my personal and union capacity, not on behalf of HUD or any other agency, but I have seen that when someone comes to you with a Violence Against Women Act complaint, when they have been attacked by their abuser and they are needing help to stay in their unit because their landlord wants to evict them because they don't want that violence there, when you don't respond to that complaint, when you don't address that, that is sentencing someone to homelessness because you've already been told that if you don't take action, they will be evicted. When someone is already homeless and they're trying to get into housing because they are a survivor of domestic violence or they're disabled and they couldn't find physically accessible housing, when you don't help that person is going to remain homeless. It's not a mystery, it's not a question. That's exactly what will happen. And it's really sad that that's being allowed to happen when we have laws and we have an agency and we have people like me, my coworkers, the investigators in the investigations office, all dedicated to trying to help people to avoid that situation and are not being allowed to do that.
And what does it look like right now when someone does come forward and they say, I'm being discriminated against for my disability status, because of my race? How does that compare to Trump being in power and Trump being out of power? What does it look like?
So there's been drastic differences in terms of just the basic responsiveness, how easy it is to file a complaint in the first place. A lot of that information has been taken off the website. It's been made much harder to file a complaint. If you're attempting to file a complaint in a language other than English, if you're trying to get help in a language other than English, all those contracts were canceled and people are not allowed to talk to people in languages other than English, even though the person needs it, and the HUD employee attempting to help them speaks that language, they're not allowed to speak it. So that's the level of restriction that we're talking about, but it goes beyond that. When it comes to the attorneys, that you're supposed to be able to get free legal help to help you investigate your complaint, to prosecute it, or to settle it without the need for litigation. All of that, so many of those attorneys have been reassigned or fired or have been forced to resign themselves because they couldn't work in this environment. So there's fewer people to help, and there's fewer investigators to actually make sure that all the facts are brought out. Correspondence with the person being sued is actually carried out in an effective manner. All of that from beginning to end has been restricted, dismantled, or just fired out of existence.
Yeah, I was going to say, of course, retaliatory actions, like what was taken against you when you came forward to reveal this.
Yes, anyone who speaks up and tells the administration that what they're doing is illegal, that it's hurting people, that it's unjust, those people face consequences, whether that's shutdowns of their work, whether that's being fired, whether that's just being not allowed to do their jobs and or being overloaded with the work of other people that were fired or reassigned or whatever happened. All of it results in people not getting the help that they need, and that's the real problem here, and that's why I had to come forward. People are entitled to this help by law, and we are legally required to provide it. That's what we want to do. That's what I took an oath to do on the first day that I became a federal employee, and I knew that I had to do whatever I could to actually fulfill that oath. And in this moment, that meant speaking out despite the risk, and I knew there was a pretty big risk. And unfortunately, some bad things have happened to me, my coworkers, but I still believe that I did the right thing, and I'm going to continue to do the right thing.
Yeah, you definitely did the right thing, because now we know this information. And
Right. Yeah, let's talk about oaths, shall we? Let's talk about oaths. Some people take an oath seriously. I've taken one to Christ. Some people make promissory affirmations. Some people pretend to make an oath. All you mugger fucking idiots who try to justify this, that and everything else on how Donald Trump didn't have his hand on the Bible or whatever. All these things that he done wrong, taking his oath. Oh, that's, Q said this and Q said that. Q said this and Q said that. Hey, America, Donald Trump didn't take an oath. He pretended to.
I know that you pushed for solutions, changes that you want to see in order to help get some remedies to people who are not currently able to get help. So I just want to say we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming forward. I'm sorry that it cost you a job. We really appreciate the sacrifice that you made coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you for telling the story. That's what matters here.
I'm so happy I got the opportunity to thank these two men personally for what they have done on behalf of all of us, because this is what it has come to. People have to sacrifice their livelihoods to tell us the truth as the Trump administration assaults our institutions and proves itself to be outright hostile to attempts to seek justice for those who are not wealthy, not powerful, not the elite. Secretary of HUD, Scott Turner, was invited to appear at this forum, by the way, and he did not show up. This administration cannot face the consequences of its choices. But there are more of us than there are of them, and we can keep the pressure on our elected officials to ensure that bad actors are held accountable. And on that note, we are facing yet another government shutdown possibility with a January 30th deadline quickly approaching. Please call your elected officials and tell them to support Senator Warren's call for HUD's Office of the Inspector General to launch an independent investigation into the Trump administration's failure to enforce the law that protects Americans from housing discrimination, and that they should not fund ICE as they terrorize our communities. 202-224-3121. Save it in your phone. Wake up in the morning with your coffee and call your elected officials every single day to detail your priorities. I know it's easy to feel hopeless right now, but all we need to do is look to people like the residents of Minneapolis to see there's power in numbers, there's power in standing in solidarity with your neighbors, and that we still have a fight on our hands here. It isn't over. If you appreciate that I was able to be on the ground for this forum and speak directly with these brave whistleblowers, and if you value this work, I would ask that you please like this video.
Food, water, shelter, education, healthcare, the 5 basic human rights, and they are rights. If they are not afforded to us, then it's not very humane, is it? See, it's coming here. It's already, you can already see the cracks forming. You can already see it starting. And you can already see the broadening of what it means to be some kind of a terrorist through ASIO. The broadening of the brush. Of what it is to be a terrorist, an economic terrorist, if you choose to go on strike. Hence the dismantling of the CFMEU. No unions to back you up. No legal representation if you decide to go on strike. If you decide to go on strike, you will be labelled an economic terrorist. I signed up to join the committee with Housing Choices. I went in the other day and Isla, my property manager, informs me that the committee has been dismantled because there were 2 people on it and one of them was racist and wouldn't talk to black people or something. Right, okay. Apparently they're going to be forming some other thing. Right. So does that mean that because he was racist and they couldn't get people to have anything to do with his committee, that this new thing that they formed is already going to be filled with people who are going to misrepresent us or not represent us at all? And if you join a committee, is pretty much everything going to have a gag order on it so that, like, you can't talk about anything anyway under the new hate speech laws? I don't have much. It's me and my 3 kids. Now, here's something that's retarded. We have a little bit of a backyard. We have an almost 0 carbon footprint. I even, because of my little garden out the back, and I run my chickens, and what I do, I'm actually reversing a carbon print. I'm actually offsetting my own carbon into my own property. Which is a housing property, Housing Choices, yes. There's me, my young adult son with level 2 autism, and my teenage daughter who lives here. My property manager seems to be hell-bent on my daughter going to study somewhere else in another town at a university. Oh, I'm not here. No, you don't want her to study in here. And my son needs to hurry up and move out because he's too old to live with Dad now. What, so NDIS can, like, not look after him? Like they don't look after the people over the back in Musson Close? Are you for real? I know what it's all about. Like, same reason that they leave certain people in houses, every so many houses in every street. Every street's got one or two people in it that nobody else in the neighbourhood wants in them, and it's devaluing everybody's property. The value of their properties, they're trashing their houses, and the people in those houses, not even necessarily them, but their kids and their friends, are causing nothing but headaches for everyone in the street. And then they will offer people, oh, would you like to move into this little shoebox with all these people with only one driveway? So we can surveil you 24/7 and you'll own nothing and be happy. Yeah, there'll be no room to keep anything. You'll have to give up half your stuff. When I first moved into this place, right? What was her name? Juanita? I think it was Juanita from memory. She was the property manager then. Tried to tell me that I had to get rid of all of my tools because I wasn't allowed to put a shed on the property at all. No, you have to get rid of your tools. Oh, there's room under the house. I used to own a panel beating shop and I said, I'm not getting rid of my tools. I'm a tradesman. Oh, you can't run a business from here. So I didn't say I wanted to run a business from here. But I'll keep my tools. Because tradesmen quite often are hired on a contractual basis with an ABN, right? Which therefore you have to supply your own insurance, pay your own super. You get paid a fairly well better rate of salary because it's a contract salary rather than a wage. And you need to supply your own tools. Yeah. Allow me to show you my backyard. Where are we? There you go. Give a ding. Work, mouse. Right. I ended up with a little shed. That's it there. This is my backyard. Okay. I've got cameras everywhere. I got it because I'm surrounded by thieves. That's a little shed that was broken into. Someone stole a bit over $4,000 worth of tools out of it. Now, there's my backyard. It's on a bit of an angle. You get over it. I'll tilt the camera. There's my chicken yard. It's all vegetables. That's strawberries. There's my backyard. That's where I compost and birds bath, chickens drink. There's the trees out the back. That land out the back there is public land that the council sold to a private property developer, who I do believe is in business with Christopher Lynch, Councillor Christopher Lynch. And that there's Nigel. He's got no friends. That's the ute that I own. That used to be a show vehicle. It got vandalised. Yeah, that hurt. Over 30 grand there once. But the point is, that property there, I grow my own vegetables. I run my own chickens. There's 3 people living here. We can live here quite happily forever. My son can be here. Now, when I pass on, he can stay here. He can have a partner who moves in. His sister can help to look after him because he has level 2 autism. Now, nobody looks after your son better than yourself if you give a shit about your kids, right? Rather than have a carer that just pops up every now and then and does a load of dishes, asks him if he's had a shower, takes him down the street to buy some McDonald's and calls that caring for him, yeah, they can go and get fucked. Because that's all I see happening over the back in Musson Close. That's all I see anywhere. And then they go and write their own paycheck for it. NDIS is going bye-byes. We don't have the money. The country does not have the money. This is what these idiots in these jobs that have never actually worked a day in their life and call themselves property managers who can't even evict anybody in Housing Choices. How's this for a racket? Housing Choices. It's just an administration company that are administrating homes, Housing Australia, Homes Co-op, the Housing Co-op, Homes Tasmania, Homes Victoria, Homes New South Wales. They're just administrators. You can't talk to them. Who knows who they are? And as soon as they took over, right, what was low income housing, we're paying the same rent as anybody. I pay $700 a fortnight to stay here in this old as the hills house. It's old. It's old. Costs a fortune to heat up in winter. I don't care. I'm happy with it. It's my nothing. As you can see, I don't have a lot. Okay? I ride bikes. The Commodore in the driveway that you've seen is unregistered. But it goes. It's fine. That's how I get out of Dodge car. If shit hits the fan and we've got to leave, we've got a station wagon to load up and leave in. If a fire comes through the place, we can put our clothes, our sacred belongings and our food in it, and we can get out of here. And we're not such a burden on the system, on the charity system. That's what that's all about. Okay? That we can stay here and not be a burden on the system at all. But yet the government wants to take our nothing off us. 10 years I had a business for. For half of that time I worked a second job to offset my tax. So I didn't get a tax return for 10 years. But my income tax from the second job I worked paid my business tax. That's a shitload of money while I was stimulating local economy. Spending money through my business. And supporting my family. Paying rent for a workshop and a rent for a house. I had 5 cars, so I spent a lot of money on registration. I have done my bit. I'm getting old now. I'm not old, but I'm getting there. They are running the place down on purpose. I don't know what to make of Isla, if she's full of shit or just dumb as a fucking box of rocks, to be honest. Probably both. Oh, I'm nice to her, but I know that she's being nice to me. I know all about customer relations. I owned a business. My dad owned a business. I know all about how to pretend to be nice to somebody. So if you're seeing this, like, yeah, come on. You're not fooling me. You think you are, but you're not. They don't want us owning anything. They want us all to live on top of each other in shoeboxes. They're sending the place to hell in a handbasket on purpose. They've halved our rubbish collection so that everywhere ends up full of fucking rats and shit. They've done all this shit on purpose. They are sending all of our publicly paid for services down the gurglers. Privatising it all. Now they privatise the driving the footpath inspections to some foreign company who's driving around on a 4-wheeler covered in cameras on a Saturday. Yeah, he'll be paid a pretty penny out of your rates and taxes. Which comes from the RBA. Like, you wonder why the council's just blowing money left and right and it keeps saying, oh yeah, it's for upgrades for this and it's for this and it's for that, and they're paying it for these fucking idiots. Oh, they're looking at the footfight. Oh, they put the pew. Some fucking frog cunt. This Yeah. I know what you're up to, mate. Yeah, fuck off. Huh? You get. It's not nice to know that the council's spending our rates so wisely, isn't it? I said. What? Fuck off. I couldn't be nice to him. How can I be? How can he be nice to that? I'm not going to pretend that that's all okay, because it's not. Why do you think they're hiring foreigners to do it? Why do you think there's a company in Melbourne that's doing all the planning for the digital smart city here in Burnie? It's a Melbourne company that is hooked up to some digital smart city World Economic Forum agenda thing. Well, yeah, they want us homeless. But then they're going to give us the solution, aren't they? How is it a solution? This one home can it's served plenty of people in the past. I'm going to say it's a shitty home. It's not. I'm grateful for it. It's not terrible. Absolutely, it's not terrible. It's in structurally damn good condition. It's just shit to try and keep warm in winter. My point is like there's brand new homes over there, over the other side of the suburb, like brand spankers, less than 10 years old, and we're paying the same rent. That annoys me. Shouldn't a house that's 50, 60 years old be paying a little bit less rent because it costs us a lot more to keep warm? That's all my point is. We're paying a lot more in energy than they are. Therefore, shouldn't that be offset with lower rent? No, because they want us poor. Not only do they want us poor, this is our Commonwealth homes. Our Commonwealth savings from the Commonwealth Bank before it was registered with the the central banking system, forcing us to start a Federal Reserve of Australia bank that needs permission from the International Monetary Fund and Unidroit to print our own money, which we then have to pay back in interest, and we're going into debt. And these scumbags in Queen Street in Melbourne are getting all of our money through Centrelink. They're getting it through Centrelink, and you want to call us the parasites? Ha! I don't think there's a word for that sort of ignorance.